Good evening. The hour of 6 p.m. having arrived, call to order this regular meeting of the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and channel 1302. The video is also streamed on the city's website and is posted on the website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Copies of the printed agenda are available in the wall pockets just as you enter this meeting room. The public and other city councilors will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on agenda items under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. I'll not recognize an individual a second time until everyone who wishes had a first chance to speak. Anyone who wishes to address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room, identify themselves by name and address prior to speaking. And written comments from the public will be accepted at the city clerk's office until Tuesday at 1 p.m. The minute taker operates remotely, so please speak well and clearly when you're at the microphones. And if we fail to turn our microphones on, there's a voice from the air that tells us to turn it on. So we have everybody's present, so we can do business right here. With that, first item on the agenda is Recreation Center.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Andy Bohannon, Deputy City Manager. So today, or tonight, I have in front of you a $10,000 donation from the Savings Bank of Walpole. And just a little background. So part of the CDFA grant that we received for the development and of the Brian Mattson Recreation Center was the ADA ramp that leads from the parking lot down to the War Memorial. So we have done all of the other pieces of the grant that we applied for. So this was kind of the final one. We've bid it out once. We received bids that were extremely high, and so we rejected them. And we kind of redesigned the ramp, if you will, to be in a different location, be a little bit more cost effective. We put that out. We received our high bid was, or our low bid was $180,000. Still fairly significantly higher than what we had budget originally. When we kind of put this together, we worked with engineering. We had roughly about a $85,000 ramp that we thought from our cost estimation, but we wanted to put this out. We put it together a budget, so when we did receive bids, we thought we'd be adequate. And we put together about $115,000, and when we had the $180,000, we still had that significant gap. So in order to try to make that delta, I've been knocking on the doors and calling different places that I typically do for various projects, whether that be playgrounds or skate parks or dog parks or disc golf, wherever that may be. I've hit them up related to this project. So far, we've gotten 2 donations. The next one will come in through the city manager's process. But this first one was $10,000 from the Savings Bank of Walpole. So with that, I hope you gratefully accept it.
Very nice, thank you. Members of the committee? Members of the public? Do you want to add anything? You good?
Yeah, I want to thank Andy for his efforts on this, looking for different ways to fund this important part of the project. It's important for us to add the ADA accessibility with this new ramp. And I will also note, though, we are going to be coming back again. So while we are able to, or Andy really has been able to raise some of the money, we're not going to be able to raise it all. So we will be coming back at a future FOP meeting looking for an additional appropriation for the difference in the project.
Okay. Good job. Savings Bank of Walpole, local bank. Nothing like them.
Yeah, we
It's a good thing
appreciate
they're
'em.
around.
We appreciate them.
All right, get a motion up here?
Move to recommend that the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to accept the donation of $10,000 from Savings Bank of Walpole, and that the money be used for the construction of an ADA ramp at the Recreation Center.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion, members of the committee? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, unanimous.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. City engineer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Brian Roof, City Engineer. The city is currently under contract with DOT and McFarland Johnson for the design of the replacement of the George Street Bridge project. As part of that, our design engineer is required to perform an environmental review, a NEPA review, in conformance with DOT and federal funding standards. As part of that, one of the items that recently was completed was a soil management plan for the project. Part of this project includes documented DES hazardous materials that are on file with DES as a hazardous material site as part of the People's Linen property. That's been the limits of those hazardous and contaminated materials have been defined to the road right-of-way, but not into the right-of-way, river, or adjacent properties that are involved in this project. As part of DES's review, they asked that scope, that testing, be added to our project where we're doing the excavation of soils to ensure or confirm that there's either contaminated or non-contaminated soils on that property. It's a good use of funds to essentially spend money up front to make sure that we're not allocating money for both testing and disposing of contaminated materials as part of the construction project. We've collaborated with McFarland Johnson, DOT, and DES to develop a scope that is approved by all of them, that has been reviewed by all of them, and we have formal approval from DOT that they will participate in this additional cost to the project for this scope. Based on that, so essentially with this change order would be $52,931, $42,000 of which roughly would be paid, reimbursed to the city by DOT. The remaining $10,586 would be the responsibility of the city. At the end of the project, we potentially could be under budget on the project overall, and this could be a moot point. This could be within the initial agreement for this project, but we won't know to the end. So I anticipate we'll probably be under budget, but given this is a separate item, we're requesting a change order to track this level of effort separately. In light of that, we're recommending that the committee authorize the city manager to execute a change order with McFarland Johnson and DOT, not DES. I apologize for the typo on that. It's McFarland Johnson and DOT because the funding is coming from DOT in the amount of $52,931.81 as part of the additional scope of work I've described herein for the George Street Bridge reconstruction project. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Questions up here? Public? Guys don't want to hear how a bridge gets built? All right, motion, please.
Move that the city manager be authorized to execute a change order with McFarland Johnson and DOT in the amount of $52,931.81 as part of the additional scope of work required for the George Street Bridge Project 75 M020A.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Further discussion, members of the committee? Seeing none, all in favor? No one's opposed, unanimous. Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Mr. Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While we're getting set up for the record, Jason Martin, Fire Chief.
Greg Seymour, Deputy Fire Chief.
This item that I'm bringing before you tonight is a continuation of the presentation that Deputy Seymour provided to you at your last committee meeting, focusing on fire department staffing and needs. Tonight, we will show you how our current staffing compares to the national standard published by NFPA. We will show staffing numbers to similar New Hampshire fire departments. Then we will we will talk about a few peripheral benefits to increasing our staffing levels, such as a possible increase in revenue collected from ambulance service and a possible savings for businesses with our ISO rating. We will explore with you the opportunity of applying for a grant-funded staffing. This would be through the competitive SAFER grant. Then we will ask for your recommendation to authorize the city manager to apply, accept, and expend, if awarded, the 2024 SAFER grant. With that, I'll turn over our presentation to Deputy Seymour.
Hello, everybody. So this is a continuation from our last meeting. I do have that and other information, so I can go back if we have any questions or want to compare anything. Big questions that came from the last meeting are kind of what standards are we kind of trying to meet, and who drives what we staff, how we staff it, and how we respond to incidents. I'm hopeful that I've answered a bunch of those questions in this. Any questions, please let me know as we go through it. So the three big organizations that kind of overarch us are NFPA, which is the National Fire Protection Association, NIST, which is the National Institute for Standards and Technology, and ISO, which is Insurance Services Office. We'll go through a little bit of each of those and how they kind of govern us, but we're going to dive first into NFPA. Their standard 1710 is it governs career fire departments, tells us how we'll staff or how we should staff, how we should respond, and what metrics we should meet as a career fire department. Fortunately, there's videos that will do a much better job than I would of muddling my way through it. So I'll play a short video. Before I do play that video, though, I want to just put out there is this standard has many parts to it, and you're going to hear some numbers that are pretty sizable. We will never be able to meet the standards for medium and high hazard. So please ignore those numbers, and I'm happy to clarify after the video. So. Doesn't want to work well here. 1 second.
While he's getting set up, I just want to also point out that the reason we're showing this video tonight is in response to a comment that we received from a citizen at the last FOP meeting in regards to how we staff the department and whether or not we could look at different ways of staffing it. And this video, I believe, if we can get it to work, will help illustrate why it's important to have the firefighters that we are requesting.
Yeah, my apologies. Can everyone hear this okay? Can you? Oh. Oh, yeah.
At a fire scene, you want a firefighter doing every job that needs to be done to save you Can you turn on your microphone, please?
Yep. So we would never be able to meet the medium or high hazards. Those, I feel like those are unattainable for us, especially at this point in the city. So 15, however, we're currently 4 short per shift from meeting the 15 minimum standard. And I'm going to go through a little bit here as to kind of why that standard is important and what it means to us, especially for the city of Keene. So in most occasions, the initial arriving companies, which we have right now, we have Engine 1, Ladder 2, and the 2 ambulances, are the only resources that we have and maybe the only resources that we get. As we mentioned, around us is they're primarily volunteer communities, and the career departments around us are so far out, and they're also pretty well strapped. They may or may not be able to send resources to us, and if they do, they're not timely. According to the U.S. Fire Administration, today's fires are faster and hotter, which we know, through synthetic products in furniture. They produce more BTUs. These fires are far more dangerous today than they were 50 years ago in our grandparents' homes. As of right now, it takes just 3 to 5 minutes for a fire to grow out of control and involve the entirety of a room. I do have a video I'll show you in just a few minutes that'll kind of cover some of that. But knowing that 3 to 5 minute fire growth is so important because we don't have resources that can come to us and help us in 3 to 5 minutes. I know I can't get from my home to the fire station in 3 to 5 minutes any day of the week. So to have our resources do that same it's an unattainable goal. I'll show a short video, hopefully this will work for us, that just speaks to fire growth. It's not going to work for us. I did test this, I promise. So I'm going to skip forward through a lot of this video just for interest of time. But on the left side of this screen, you'll see a legacy room, which is our grandparents' furniture, the natural materials, woods, cottons, stuff like that. On the right is a modern room with synthetic furnitures, synthetic coverings, plastics. So we'll see a significant difference in the fires today and why they burn so much hotter. This has no sound, so it's okay. I'm going to skip forward to about the minute and 27 mark, where we'll see some fire production from the room on the right. What I also want you to notice in comparing the 2 rooms is the smoke production that also comes from the modern room. That smoke is just as if or more dangerous than the fire itself. It doesn't in this video. If this was a home, that smoke is leaving that fire room and traveling down the hall, traveling up stairwells to the 2nd floor where people are sleeping. It's migrating to other areas of the house, and also it's banking down and starting to stack its way down in the room from the ceiling to shoulder height to head to shoulder height, causing visibility issues, breathing issues. And so people who would try to put that fire out are putting themselves in real danger. What you can't see is a buildup of gases like carbon monoxide and other things like that that are very harmful to us. You'll see as this fire grows, the heat is starting to kind of reflect off the walls and ceiling and onto the floor. If you get a good enough image, you'll see that certain things are starting to off-gas and smoke, and we're only 2.5 minutes into the start of the fire. We're just really able to appreciate some good, quick fire growth. Give it just a couple more seconds here. And you'll see as the couch takes off a little faster, the curtains are gone, and we're starting to reflect more of that heat back down. You'll see a lot of smoke production now. That smoke will have been filling the house, the 1st floor, 2nd floor of the home. This will be why, for us, searches are so important. And searching for us ahead of a hose line, once we put a hose line into a house in a room like this, we disrupt all of these gases. The smoke comes to the floor, steam fills the environment. Anybody who's on the floor or trying to get themselves out, whether they're in a wheelchair, elderly, or just disoriented, they can't. And we need to be able to see them quickly, keep them in good air, and get them out of the home, whether that's dragging them out, helping them to walk out, or whatever means we need. You'll see now that the floor is starting to off-gas, and pretty soon you'll see complete involvement of the room, or what we call flashover. And just like the smoke was, the flames that are exiting that room would be spilling into the hallway, starting to involve other rooms, and starting this same process in the adjacent rooms. What I also want you to notice is that smoke and fire travel upwards. The second most dangerous place in this building is the room directly above it, which is why that's our second place we go to. Our initial companies, which we'll go through a little bit, attack the seat of that fire, The other ones are searching in that direct area and moving their self away. Second arriving companies, Ladder 2 and A2 out of West Keene, if they're second due, are going to the floor above. Because we don't have the staff to do it, many times that's without the protection of a hose line, which is by far the most dangerous place in a fire building to be. So we can see, I'll stop the video here, that we have full engulfment of that room, and the home at this point would be very well involved. Please keep in mind, this is only 4.5 minutes since they lit the fire. If we were lucky and caught it at minute 2 and called 911 at that point, the 911 phone call would just be getting transferred to us, and we, if we're lucky, would just be getting dispatched to this fire. We're already well behind the 8 ball in this, so time is always of the essence, and we're always losing to it. That's why when we speak to why we send so many trucks to an initial alarm, an engine, a ladder, because if we arrive and find this, it's already too late to call for more help. We only have what we have, and that's what we need to be effective. So, I don't expect you to read that. That's more for me than it is for you. But these are the 22 essential fireground functions. These are what we have to complete these at every fire. We don't have a choice. And this doesn't matter if you have 5 people or 50 people, all these things need to get done. Many of them are at the exact same time. They are obtaining water supply from a fire hydrant or from a fire truck, positioning the apparatus and positioning it correctly. If we miss our positioning and we have to add length to our lines or our ladders don't reach, we have to reposition, which takes time. That's why our training is so important. The shift commander conducts a scene size up, does a 360 of the building. What we can see here on the front of this building and what we can see on the back are 2 very different pictures. This building from the front looks like it's totally engulfed in fire, but if you were to take a walk around the building, there's a lot of places where victims could be alive, where people can still be, there's still tenable environments where people could survive. That's why it's so important for us to get into those spaces as quickly as possible and get people out of them. To aid in that, getting aerials and ladders placed around the building to help people evacuate from upper floors, lower floors, and get some ventilation going to ease up that space and allow people to breathe clean air while we get them in and out. Also helps with our searching. If we can see, we can move a lot faster. Setting up the supply attack engines, gaining and forcing entry. Barred windows, barred doors, locked things are very difficult for us to get into. Placing ground ladders I talked about, and conducting that primary search, starting at the fire floor and then starting on the floor above. Finally, if we're fortunate and are able to extinguish the fire, checking for extension, looking for upper floors for fire progression, especially in older homes. Making sure that we've really contained everything and that we do a good secondary search and make sure we haven't missed anybody or anything that needs to be done. That's why NFPA created that, and NIST did a lot of studies to show what is required for residential fires. They tested each crew size from a 3-person engine to a 4, to a 5, and to a 6. And I can email that stuff out later. It's a very long study I wasn't going to print out, but they look at the percentages and how much faster each company is at completing all of those fireground tasks. So next is ISO, which ISO is a company that grades fire departments and communities and uses that grading system 1 through 10 to set the insurance rates for residential and commercial buildings. Currently, we are at a 3, which I would think is average. It's not exceptional. It's not horrible. But the biggest places we're missing out, the 2 scores that we always seem to lose out on, is company personnel and training. Our company personnel currently get a 6.76 out of 15 points. They speak to a poor size and poor availability of personnel to respond to a first alarm structure fire, which is how they grade everything off of. In our training documentation, so 5.43 out of 9 for our training, and we've discussed in the past is we're running a lot of incidents throughout the course of the day, and the companies don't have downtime to complete that training. We're trying to kind of tighten that up with better documentation and better systems that make things faster for us, but the load of call volume on each company is a hindrance to their daily trainings and requirements. And you can see we score, for the fire department section of that, we score a 34.91 out of a total of 50. So we do have some other areas we can improve upon. I'd love to tell you how much how much we can change by changing our ISO class, but no one can give me straight answers, including my own insurance company for my house. So, just a couple of facts. It takes and this came out of the NIST study. It takes 4 to 5 firefighters to effectively extricate a single unconscious victim from a home. And that means they're getting them from an upper or first floor and getting them out of the building. Remember, they're dead weight, so to speak. They're not helping us. They're being dragged up and over things that have fallen over and out of this environment. A 200-foot section of inch and three-quarter line, hose line, which is the smallest one that we use. 200-foot section of that weighs around 288 pounds. So we're looking at an engine company and trying to move quickly through a space, moving a 288-pound line through those through that environment requires more, 2 at least, but the more we have, the faster we can do that, and without it getting trapped in things behind us. So, and cancer and heart disease are the leading cause of death for firefighters. This is complicated by overexertion, high stress, and dehydration. When you consider our current staffing levels and availability of personnel to come back, when our initial responders go into a building structure fire, they're in a superheated environment. They're being taxed beyond a normal person's, really the normal person's levels and what we can do on a normal day. They come out of that building, they put a new fresh bottle in, and they go back in. They don't have a moment to rest. Even athletes after a run need a moment to lower their heart rates, get themselves back and refreshed, and get their vision to a better place before they go back in. We don't have the ability. In many instances, we're doing 2 or 3 20-minute bottles before help is able to arrive to help us out. So we're going far, far beyond where we should be, which promotes injuries, illness, and decreases our effectiveness over the course of the incident. Not to mention, when that incident's over, they still have the rest of their shift to work, whether that's 10 or 15 calls or another 23 hours. So I kind of discussed this already, our position assignments for our 10 personnel. When we respond to a building fire, assuming it's in District 1, which is downtown, Engine 1, the 3 people on Engine 1, the vehicle operator will get that pump ready, help get the hoses flaked out, and then operate that vehicle, get the pump and send water to the firefighters who are entering the building, going to the seat of the fire to put that fire out and try to stop the emergency as quickly as we can. The ambulance, if they're available to accompany them, we'll start that search on that first floor. Remember, we had heavy heat and smoke production pushing down, looking for people immediately around the fire. Ladder 2, when they get here out of West Keene, they'll assist Engine 1. One person will help get a backup line to them. Often with the BTUs coming out, a single line is not enough to extinguish the fire. We need more than one. And Ladder 2 will also perform a search on the floor above the fire, look for extension. And then the shift commander is securing exterior utilities, coordinating fire attack, and coordinating the additional resources that we need when they're coming in. How do we compare kind of across New Hampshire? I'm not saying that we should look at every other community, but I think it's important to see the kind of workload and the numbers of where we're at compared to other people. You can see here we're currently at a shift of 10 personnel responding to approximately 6,348 incidents a year. You can see the other departments that compare with us, Derry, Portsmouth, Salem, and Londonderry, have 15, 17, and even 13 personnel responding to the same or far less incidents than we do in the course of a year. And final slide for us. So far in 2025, this is just a backup from from last week, is in 2025 we responded to 465 total incidents. To today anyways, we have another weekish to go. 48% of them have been overlapping. That includes 4 building fires, 2 appliance fires, 1 chimney fire, 314 medical emergencies, 5 crashes with injuries, and some requiring extrication with the jaws of life. 3 carbon monoxide incidents, 4 because they're on another one right now, 4 cardiac arrests, 29 callbacks for city coverage, and our busiest day for service so far was 36 calls. And that is the numbers that I have for you so far to try to answer the questions from last time. Any questions I can answer from that?
Thank you for what you've gone through, and part of it's to answer one of the questions that the people asked about how much. I woke up one morning, now I smelled some smoke, and then the house right next to me was on fire. And the flames were coming out, and the first question I asked is, where is all the firemen? Anybody can see that's not enough people here to handle this fire. And I'm saying, it's only like 25 feet between, and I'm standing out here and watching the siding on my house melt and keep saying, I don't want my house on fire. And then Brattleboro came, then Swansea came, and then it took more than a few hours to put that house under control that we would feel. And so people can talk about why you're sending so many people, but if your house or the house right next door to you is burning and you know it only takes a couple of sparks or flames to get your house, is all I'm going is, where is the regular fireman? I'm telling my wife, we got to get these papers out of the house, we got to get this, we got to move our car. And so, and that was the house at about 56 Grove Street. The 2 apartments was a total waste, destroyed. But that went really quick. It only took about 15 minutes and that house was done. And like I said, repeat myself, is where are the firemen? Why is it taking so long for more to get here? Because there's not enough to it. And all you would, with the firemen that you had, you were just trying to contain it. You couldn't really fight it because you didn't have enough, and it was a long way to the closest fire hydrant. So that explains where all the people are hooking up the fire hydrant, bringing the hoses, making sure the hose is not kinked and all that kind of stuff. And so I want to thank you, and your demonstration was well supportive of what you're trying to get across.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I probably made the poor choice of, at one point there was a fire on Elm Street, and I went to the house next door to check on one of my friends who was in the house next door. And the house that was on fire was gone pretty quickly. And to your point, the siding on my friend's house was melting, looked like a smiley face when it was done. But it was very fast, and that was a cold day, cold period of time like this, and it took 3 or 4 attempts to get a hydrant that wasn't frozen. And the amount of time to go figure that out and understand it, I really appreciate the add-on of what those days can look like. I know that the prior meeting was really focused on the overexertion and the amount of hours that folks are having to work. This one's more focused on, hey, by the way, this is also below standard. So these are 2 different cuts at the same request. I think there's probably some confusion if the public was to watch on why you're showing 2 different cuts at it, but I think it's really in response to a request that was out there, I think was why there's so many. But yeah, I really appreciate the presentation.
Thank you. Over here. All set? There's no public, so
Okay.
go right ahead.
There's lots of public. Probably none that wants to speak right now. But yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up, Councilor Remy, because the last FOP meeting, we really did focus on the growth in the number of calls, where we saw the greatest growth, and that was in the nursing homes or the skilled nursing facilities, why that was happening, the loss of Deluzio service and the change of ambulance service in the region. And then we also focused on just the lack of access to other career fire departments, the closest one being Concord and Claremont, but both within an hour. And then the over-reliance on volunteer fire departments and what we've seen over time, which is, basically a dwindling of people serving in those departments and more difficulty getting out to respond. And so that's where all the firemen are. They're not volunteering anymore. Those fire departments that used to be strong and we rely on them now, and we relied on them in the past. They're not able to respond in the same way that they did. And so that's really what convinced me, because when we started this conversation this time around, I was looking at paramedic or EMT service, and really beefing up that service instead of creating more firefighter positions, because the majority of our calls are EMS related. But because we rely on having an appropriate number of firefighters to fight a fire, and we aren't able to rely on our neighbors as much as we once did, it really convinced me that we needed more firefighters, so that we could be more self-reliant, which then brought us to the conversation of this SAFER grant, which is what we're hoping tonight you will support. We'd like to be able to apply for a SAFER grant, and I don't want to steal your thunder, Chief. If you don't mind, I'll keep rolling with it. But we'd like to apply for a SAFER grant for 4 additional firefighters per shift. And the reason for that is because we're trying to meet the minimum number that the deputy was just referring to. And SAFER grants only fund firefighters. They do not fund EMS only. And so it's important that we are looking at those NFPA standards and relying on those as a reason and justification for our grant application. Now, if we are not successful applying, and we will learn, I think, in September whether or not we're successful, we will be back to you to look at what we might be able to do on our own and more immediately, and how we might be able to phase that. And so we have hired a grant writer to help us submit this grant. The grant writer has been successful with SAFER grants in the past, and so we're hoping he will help us to be successful as well.
Well said, thank you. So that number, I want to just say that it is key in a couple different ways. It shows that I think we've justified the need for it, and it would support all the issues we have with staff, but it's also gives us the best chance of being awarded the grant. We meet the standard of 1710 0% of the time now to that low hazard fire, because we don't have enough people on duty. If we were able to get to 15, that means we would meet it 100% of the time, because they base it off of best case scenario. There's no multiple calls going on, everybody's in the station, so that's how they would grade it. So our swing would go from 0 to 100% in the low acuity fires, which you can't get a better swing than that, and I think that would be a really good feather in our cap of possibly getting awarded the grant.
Again?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't want to do it for a feather, but I think it's the right thing to do. So I want to be careful about why we think about why we're doing it. I'm jumping a little ahead because I'm talking about how I'm thinking about this, but I still would expect us to continue to try to get creative about how we're dealing with, and this isn't just fire department, this is across the board, about the folks that are repeat calls, because we heard a lot about that, where there's some folks that, in whether it's different homes in the city or it's individuals or that are potentially offenders of misuse of the system. If there's things we can do to get better initial info from 911 for the calls, so we can make a more appropriate response, so that we don't necessarily need to send 10 people to something that there might be a 1-person or 2-person job. I don't want to say 1 person, there's probably never a 1 person, but if we can get better responses there. And I also will push that, especially because we talk about how do we get relief, and somebody's like putting on a new tank and going back in, I do think we need to put effort around rebuilding the call program. I know that it's hard because employers, the perception is that employers won't be supportive. I can tell you, I know from a few that they would be. They've just never been asked. And how do we get to that point of getting the right person? It's hard because corporate is a wall, right? You don't know who to ask to say, is this okay? But I'm sure we could find a few that would be willing to support letting some of their folks go out. Not every day, not every, but for larger events that there might be a problem, I'm sure you can find some folks. So those are the comments I'd have around it, but generally I appreciate the request.
Thank you. Folks in the audience? Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Personally, I, I think the case that was just presented is compelling. But I also want to encourage the committee and the process to continue to look at the total call volume in the department. And it was interesting in the Sentinel when, for the last presentation, that juxtaposition to the article about the presentation to your committee was the report from the State Department of Insurance describing the statewide issue around EMS and the charges that are can be charged for Medicare, Medicaid, and private insurance calls for medical emergencies. It's a tub that I hope we can look at over these 4 years, how to put it on its own bottom. And I think that there are, it's not too complicated to put that spreadsheet together, but there are a lot of variables. But I think we could start to figure out what is that cost and how do we put that on its own bottom. Because essentially we've got a department with multiple functions that ultimately needs a certain budget in order to meet its requirements. And the chargeback is a component of that revenue, and it's not enough. And it's a statewide issue, and I suspect this is a national issue as well. So putting that equation together is a part of how are we going to fund the staffing requirements of our fire department and minimize the impact of the staffing needs on our taxpayers. And I hope that that's part of our ongoing conversation. The grant is a great idea. It's a jump start, but it's not the solution in the end.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of work happening around Medicare and Medicaid rates right now and being able to collect more, and we'll certainly be part of that legislative process advocating for an increase in those rates. I will tell you that reason why everyone's struggling and there are fewer ambulance services is because 911 is not a moneymaker. It's very difficult to recoup all of your expenses when you're providing these services, which is why we rely on communities to do it, because they're subsidized by taxpayers. But even saying all that, we definitely will be pursuing ways to increase our revenue and looking at what we're billing to all of our communities. There are 5 contract towns. How much we're collecting. We've been pretty successful at collecting. I have to give a shout out to the administrator, Kelly DeRozier. She is fabulous at working on making sure all of our billings are getting done correctly and that we're collecting as much as we possibly can. And so our rates have been pretty good, and I haven't looked at them recently, but we've been pretty competitive with other services. The other thing that we're doing between now and September, so we have more work to do before we come back. So if we receive the grant, we have to come back to you and ask permission to move forward. But if we don't receive the grant, we're coming back. So in between now and then, we are working on some additional numbers and charts to provide to you. Today we had a meeting at 4 o'clock looking at the heat map. Where are the majority of our calls in the city? How has that changed since the last time the staffing committee looked at that? We talked about looking at deeper into the nursing homes and the skilled nursing facilities. right now, it looks like we're actually making money from them, that even though the calls have gone up, it's been a profitable change for us. And so digging more into those numbers between now and September and having a report to present to you at your September FOP meeting.
The mayor brought up an important point about wanting to make sure we have as minimal impact as possible on the taxpayers. But we can go the other way if we don't maintain a certain level. Yes, you have paid less for your taxes, but has anybody been looking at the homeowner's insurance lately? If we don't make a certain standard, those homeowner insurances are going to go up and up. Mine's up about $1,000 over the past couple of years, and nothing's happening. So if the insurance company feels that we don't have enough firefighters to respond in an appropriate amount of time, they're going to say increase risk, increase fire insurance on your house. And so we got to get the proper balance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
One other thought. I know that our staffing ratio is about 10 firefighters per shift, but that actually isn't accurate. And I hope part of that equation that I'm envisioning is the substitution effect, meaning it was presented that the overtime costs are significant to maintain that 10. When you take those hours that we are adding on through overtime, that's an addition to the force. It's not a healthy addition. I get that case that was presented. And that's part of the equation that I kind of envision is how do we do what is suggested, increase the number of firefighters per shift, but at the same time reduce the overtime costs that are currently required in order to meet that shift. I think I don't want to explain it any further than to say that's a part of the staffing equation, and it's part of what needs to get solved in the overall approach to how are we going to bolster the staff.
Thank you. Lieutenant, Captain, Chief?
I'll go with the President tonight. Hi, Rob Scrocky, President, Professional Firefighters of Keene. Thank you all for your consideration on all these facts. I know it's a lot to digest, and I appreciate you, and I know there's many counselors watching at home tonight, and I appreciate everyone being engaged in the conversation, asking good questions over the last couple of weeks, because it is a lot, and our members are going through a lot, and, you know, the grant, folks, is still a maybe, and I think we need to remember that. And if we did the math on the call numbers that were presented tonight from just what's happening in January, we're going to be projected for well over 7,000 calls this year, another significant increase in call volume. And waiting until September may not be the best option to start to take some action. So I ask you tonight, knowing that there's not fire trucks regularly available in the city almost every single day, how long are we as a community and are you as a council, how long are you willing to wait to authorize the city manager to immediately increase the minimum staffing in the fire department?
Thank you. Anybody else? Well, I guess everybody knows where I sit on this particular topic, and it's an expense we have to bear as a community. We're the county seat. We got a hospital. We got everybody comes to Keene because they love it. It creates a huge amount of work for us in all our departments, but certainly in the police and fire. It increases the number of calls for service. And we get called, we're going to go. We're going to go as soon as we can. And I think that you've heard this presentation, this series, with the best data available. So I guess the next thing is to pray for this safer grant, because that'll get us going. There's a lot behind it, and I think the other part that folks, the average person, doesn't understand what it takes to go 24 hours a day. Most people operate their business 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 or 6 days a week. When you start clicking in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, those numbers they just grow. And people need their time off. And you get a call, it's going to reduce the numbers available. So I would support this going right in there to DC, and maybe we can pull some strings, I don't know. So I'm looking for a motion.
Move to recommend that the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to apply for, accept, and expend the 2024 FEMA Safer Grant, and if successful, maintain this staffing level.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion, members of the committee? All in favor? No one opposed, unanimous? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep. Go ahead.
I have one additional thing, not related to the fire department, so you're free to go. We have in the room tonight our new finance director, Carrie Chamberlain. She is attending her first finance meeting. She started about a week ago, and she came to us from Cheshire Medical Center. She was a senior analyst there, but before that, she had experience at an auditing firm. She has a bachelor's degree in business management and accounting and a master's degree in health administration, and we're very excited to welcome her to our team. So just a welcome to Carrie.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
And congratulations, welcome back.
Thank you.
Sorry for texting while you were out. I forgot that you were out.
I was like, I'm actually getting married today.
I'm like,
You texted